That's really solid. Well, everybody, it is the end of May here, and we pretty much have Karl's motorcycle back to a state that we want to go on a trip. Now, we were going to do a little bit of moto camping, but I'm just not quite prepared for that. I still need to buy a couple things, a sleeping pad and a couple other things. So we're just going to stay in a hotel for a couple days and ride. Now, the area that we're going to is Port Elgin, Ontario, which is located in the Bruce County and Peninsula, which is bordering Lake Huron. Now, I have snowmobiled in this area, I don't know how many times, a dozen at least, and I camp there 1 or 2 times a year at McGregor Point Provincial Park with my wife, and we absolutely love the area. The nice thing about it is there are tons of gravel roads to explore, and that's exactly what the DR650 is designed to do. And that's what Karl and I like to ride. We're kind of getting a little older, we're not the most skilled riders, so we like to sort of just look around and go on our adventure, which is mostly gravel roads. On top of the gravel roads, there is one trail that we are going to ride, and it's an old converted rail trail that is now a multi-use trail, and it runs from Port Elgin, Ontario, all the way to Clifford, Ontario, about 80 kilometers away. Now, this trail, again, is multi-use, so there are hikers and mountain bikers and even equestrians in some places on this trail. And in order to ride it on a motorized vehicle like this DR650, you need to be a member of the Ontario Federation of Trails. These people take care and manage the trail system throughout Ontario, very similar to the way the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs does. So we joined that this year. It's the first time I've ever done it. And this trail is supposed to be fairly simple and good for people like Karl and I who don't really ride a lot off-road. We're mostly gravel road kind of guys. So I got everything loaded up here. I think I'm ready to go. Port Elgin's about a 4-hour drive if you go fairly direct. It's going to take us probably 6 hours, and we always like to stop for lunch too. I don't miss too many meals if you haven't noticed. So we're just going to enjoy the ride up there, get into the hotel, and then tomorrow we'll actually start investigating and exploring the Port Elgin area. Okay, let's get ready to go now.
So I'm just going to head over to Karl's here and pick him up, and I can see his bike's already ready. But as I pull in the driveway, I realize I got a little bit of a problem.
I got a blinker out. Yeah, the rear blinker's not working. Might have to, I think it's probably just a bulb. What's that?
The little Phillips?
I guess, yeah.
It didn't take Karl and I long to change the light bulb in my turn signal, and before long we were out on the highway heading towards Fawn Hill, Ontario, where we decided we'd fill up with a little bit of fuel for the trip. Now, I just put in 25 liters here. I didn't fill the tank all the way to the top, but take a look. Almost $57 for 25 liters of fuel. Now, that's Canadian, but even still, it's almost criminal. So as we were heading out of Fawn Hill, we noticed this jackknife van, and it reminds us that, you know, especially on motorcycles, you got to keep your eyes open and eyes ahead, which obviously looked like rain at this point. And sure enough, by the time we got to Guelph, Ontario, we were into it a little bit for about 20 minutes. But you know what? It was about 30 degrees that day, so the rain actually was kind of refreshing. And once the rain passed, well, we took a little bit of a break. We checked all of our gear over, had a little stretch, and talked about where we were going. Had a pretty good laugh over a couple funny jokes. Now, once you get back out onto the road here, you can see we're getting closer and closer and further north here as we see more farmland and tractor dealerships and things like greenhouses that you may not see in some parts of Ontario. Now, these small communities that you go through, like Harriston here, really remind me of my hometown of Woodstock. They're farming communities, they're really solid people, and they're great places to stop for lunch or a drink and visit with some of the locals. Now, the further north we got, we passed community after community, and finally, we actually passed the trailhead, the rail trailhead. So Karl flagged me down, we spun the bikes around, and got our first taste of some dirt under the tires. I've got to tell you, it was really fun to actually get out onto this rail trail, and as we passed the first set of gates, you could really see just how secluded it feels. Even though you're still in the same area, the fact that you're riding in between cornfields and different types of fields really gives you a feeling of solitude. The trail itself is relatively straight. I mean, it is a rail bed, but it's really well maintained, and you can even see here it's almost more like a gravel road in some spots than it is a trail. But the fact that the trees are so close and it's so secluded and you don't see anybody else, it really does give you a sense of adventure, I suppose. Certainly gives you something to think about as you ride along. Now, the trail surface is mixed between hardpack and what you see here, which is a little bit more rutted out and a little bit looser gravel. And some sections are a little bit whooped out, not too bad. I think pretty much anybody can handle it, but as we approach the Port Elgin end of the trail, you can see just how rutted out it can become here. Now, there wasn't too much like this that we rode over the weekend, but this is actually where the trail ends. You'll see there's a detour here that forces you over to the left here. You can see where it says attention. So we headed out back onto the road. Once we got to the end here, we just checked the GPS and determined which way we had to go. It actually got us lost a couple times on the way up, and Karl doesn't seem to want to let me live that down, but in the end we figured out Port Elgin was a little bit to the west and the north, and as we rolled into the town, it really does show how nice and quaint it is as a little community. It's really a fun place to stay. Shortly up the road, we reached our location of our travel lodge, which we stayed at, and you know what? Both of us decided to use a couple rotor locks while we were in here after Karl's bike got stolen the last time. And we were tired enough that, you know what, we just boiled us up some soup and we were in for the night.
Well, everybody, it's day 2 here, and Karl and I just had breakfast here at Just Like Mom's restaurant. It's delicious. Where are we? Southampton, right?
Yeah.
Southampton. So it's cold this morning. It was 6 degrees out when we got up, so we had a little bit of a longer breakfast than normal, but today we're going to get back out onto the trail, ride some gravel roads. Should be fun, I think. Anyway, ready to go? Yeah, ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
All right.
Well, now that our bellies were filled up, Karl and I really wanted to just take a quick look at the lake while we were out here, and I gotta tell you, it does not disappoint. The views from Southampton are just amazing, and on a clear day like this you can really see a long way, and if you're lucky you can even meet some friends like Karl's doing here. Shortly afterwards we got ourselves back onto the rail trail and headed southeast. Again, I want to point out that if you're new to adventure riding or dual sport riding, this is a pretty safe place to learn how to ride. Yes, the gravel is a little bit loose, but if you take your time and you ride sensibly, you get to ride through some absolutely beautiful landscapes. It goes from farm fields to sometimes it seems behind people's houses. But overall, there's a real sense of freedom as you ride this trail. And you do feel very safe. You're always crossing roads, so you know that if you do get into trouble, you're not too far or too remote out in the wilderness where the bears are going to eat you. Now again, here is some of that really loose gravel that I talked about earlier, and this is probably the most challenging part of riding this rail trail. So I'm going to pull over here and we maybe have a little bit of a closer look at what the trail surface is like.
And this is what Karl and I are talking about, is this gravel can make this trail really challenging. So even though technically it's not all that hard, there's a lot of small whoops intermixed with all of this loose gravel. It's like riding on golf balls. So if you're not 100% sure of yourself, you need to take it kind of slow in here. It's not hard, it's just it can really throw you off. Anyway, back to riding, right?
Yeah.
Okay, River.
As we got closer to Paisley, we were diverted out onto the road, which is great for dual sports. You just hop on the road and away you go. Now, what we realized is the detour was due to this old train trestle. Now, train service arrived in Paisley in around the 1800s, around 1972, and this bridge has been here since then, in one form or another. Now, it crosses the Teasewater River, and it was converted into the rail trail in 2010. Unfortunately, it was damaged by fire in 2021, so Karl and I just wanted to get off the bikes and go and have a look and see how the repairs are coming along.
So this burnt down, Karl?
So they say.
When about? It's like a few years ago, or?
No idea.
But this was like, it's like 800 feet long or something. It was one of the longest wooden trestles around, I thought, from what I read. Huh, pretty cool. Yeah, this would have been pretty neat to ride across.
With popsicle sticks.
Wow. Yeah, someone's four-wheeling across the river for sure. No thanks. This is pretty neat.
Bert maybe be underneath or something.
I don't know. That's interesting. Cool.
Just a short jaunt down the road, and we entered Paisley itself. And this is where we had lunch, which was at Bonfire Pizza on Queen, which is on the main drag in Paisley and has absolutely excellent pizza and food in general. Now, we were there really early. We were actually the first customers of the day, but the place has a great atmosphere and friendly staff. And I have to say the pizza was really good. So once we got done that, we headed back out onto the trail for some more riding. For the remainder of our riding day, we basically spent it between riding the rail trail and then switching to these unimproved roads that you'd come across as you rode on the rail trail. Now, this one was a lot muddier and a lot more potholes and ruts than the rail trail had, and it made for a little bit more of a challenging ride. And many of these roads are part of the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs trail network during the winter months. So it was interesting for me to see those signposts that I've seen in the winter in the summer. It was really fun. As well as these unimproved roads, we did ride a fair amount of actual gravel roads around Bruce County. And these are really well maintained, but what we did find is a lot of them just kind of dead end. They've never been fully developed, so you got to kind of pick and choose what you ride. This one in particular was really pretty. It's called River Road, and for obvious reasons, it follows one of the tributaries that feeds the Saugeen River. It was a really nice ride, and Karl got really excited. There's lots of water around the Bruce County area, but the number one river is the Saugeen River, and it has a great following with canoers. There's a 102-kilometer canoe route that runs from Hanover, Ontario to Southampton, and there's about 18 of these launch points along the river that you can stop and have a picnic, and normally they have some information along there in terms of fish and the actual river system, and it's a great place to have a lunch break if you need it. Karl and I stopped just to have a look at the river itself, and it really is a great place to stop and stretch your legs.
The gulls.
Well, after a great day of riding and another good night's sleep, Karl and I got back on the road and headed home to Niagara. We really had a great time in the Bruce County, and we hope you enjoyed it riding along with us.
And that wraps up my first ride for 2022 with Karl. I had a great time riding up in the Port Elgin and the Bruce County area, and I know Karl did too. If you're new to riding adventure bikes or dual sport bikes, and you want to get some experience off-road and off pavement, Bruce County is a great place for someone to learn those skills. Between the gravel roads, the unimproved roads, and of course that rail trail that runs from Port Elgin all the way down to Clifford, you can get some experience on different surface types and understand how the bike feels and how it reacts under braking and that in a safe and controlled environment. Once again, if you're going to ride on the rail trail, you do need to be a member of the Ontario Federation of Trail Riders, and your bike needs to be insured. But other than that, you can ride to your heart's content and experience some of rural Ontario at its best. All right, I've got to get this bike cleaned up. There's a few things I see that I need to get done on it. But until then, you have yourself a great day, and I hope to see you soon here back at Dino's Tinker Shed. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.